Hi there, welcome. This is the Kelly's Astrology podcast, where you can find insight, guidance, and understanding through astrology. I'm Kelly, and I'll be your host. Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Kelly's Astrology podcast. In today's show, I'm going to take a look at some of the astrology highlights for the 2-week period starting December 21st. I probably won't record an episode next week as I will be traveling to visit family in Australia. And so I want to make sure that you have all the highlights for this end of year and then the start of the new year period. What we do have coming up, we have Capricorn season starting on December 21st, which is secretly one of my favorite times of the year. In terms of the top level astrology that you need to know as 2024 winds down, there is going to be a new moon in Capricorn on December 30th. In early January, around the 2nd of January, we have the shift of Venus into Pisces, and that is one of my personal highlights for the astrology of January of 2025. And I'm also going to touch on a pattern that forms involving Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn, and that's going to be active from around the 23rd, 24th of December right through to about the 27th, 28th, so in that kind of last week of December. So that's a few of the things that I plan to discuss in today's episode. Before we get further into all of that, I want to let you know about my next live webinar, which is all about the astrology of 2025. This webinar will happen on January 4th, and in it, I'll be sharing all about the major astrology events and influences and cycles that will be happening in the year ahead. If you'd like insight into what 2025 might have in store, I hope that you can join us. Even if you can't make the live recording, everyone who registers will receive the video and the slide recordings. So for more details or to sign up, pop over to kellysastrology.com. All right, so let's get into it. On December 24th, Jupiter and Saturn will form their second square aspect. This type of pattern between Jupiter and Saturn does activate longer cycles and invites consideration of more major restructuring. So you might be undergoing a kind of intensive period of refocusing or even questioning why you're doing what you're doing, what you want to keep doing, things like, is my career going where I want it to? Is this relationship going where I want it to? Is living in this area fulfilling my expectations, or are there changes I want to make? Now, the Jupiter square Saturn aspect is a slower moving configuration. So even when we say it's active on December 24th, we certainly would allow a few days before and after that date. And it's important to note that Jupiter and Saturn first made this square aspect back in August of 2024. So you might be well into this restructuring process. And because we have Mercury getting in the mix this week, so Jupiter will square Saturn on the 24th, and just a couple of days later, Mercury comes into that pattern, opposing Jupiter, which is on the 26th, and then squaring Saturn itself on the 27th. And so we have that longer Jupiter-Saturn square aspect being activated by a quicker moving planet, Mercury, and that's kind of why this period stands out to me, that December sort of 23rd to 28th period. And it really feels to me like Mercury is going to help with sorting out logistics, finalizing plans, or testing out schedules, new patterns, new rhythms, and new routines. And so hopefully you've been doing some of this bigger visioning, questioning, restructuring. Maybe you've been thinking through what you're ready to let go of, what you want to better prioritize, because Mercury coming along in this last week of December is going to help you organize things based on new or emerging dreams and goals. So Jupiter square Saturn is really a wonderful aspect for consolidation, for consolidating your focus, your energy, your effort, and even your time around one or two really big significant kind of initiatives. So one or two like major themes, major focus, maybe for 2025, but maybe for the next like 3 to 5 years. It could be a bit longer than just a year. Jupiter square Saturn is also a great aspect for stepping away from a bunch of smaller commitments or duties. You might find that you're really feeling as though you want to reclaim some of your time or energy, or that you're just realizing you're a bit over capacity, you're a bit stretched or spread too thin, and you've got to make some changes. Things have got to give. So there's this mix with Jupiter square Saturn of like consolidating, getting back on track with what's important, as well as ending or letting go some of those like extra things that might be fun, but are just taking time and energy that you don't have to give right now. During this Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn pattern that is forming, you might find that you're having some really important or meaningful discussions. You might find that there are new ideas or clarifications of like you had a hunch about something, or you were sort of longing for a certain version of the future to be, and you're getting some clarity, or you're getting the information you need to settle on a few options rather than be distracted by all the choices. So these new ideas or these important discussions can really help inspire this different vision for yourself, for your life. And this last week of December feels a bit pivotal for people saying yes to some things and saying no to others. As longtime listeners of the podcast, or maybe you're also inside my membership, so you will know that anytime we have Saturn in the mix, priorities and limits become important. It makes me think a little bit of my grandfather's farm, which I haven't visited, for many, many years, a couple of decades now. But when we were kids, we'd go to the farm a lot. And an important part of farming is keeping the fences in good working order so that the cattle wouldn't get out, so the neighbors, livestock wouldn't get into your area. And so it's really important to think about, the fences or the boundaries, the kind of containers that are holding you, that are keeping you safe, but are also defining like a necessary separateness. And so with this Saturn in the mix, we've got priorities and limits, because limits and boundaries feel a bit like fences to me. That saying like good fences make good neighbors. We want to be really clear what we're responsible for and what our neighbors are responsible for. And so with that idea of like good fences, good limits and boundaries, we also want to keep in mind that Saturn is about scaling down and refocusing. So the idea here is that we're simplifying. We're not doing everything. We might be sequencing these 5 things are important, but they're not all going to happen right away. Let's give X amount of time for the first thing and then X amount of time after that for the second or third thing or what have you. So with Saturn in the mix, you might find that you can be more clear about what matters to you, or where your limits are, or where you're trying to build a bit of a fence or a boundary. Because Mercury is making these aspects with Jupiter and Saturn as it's coming out of its retrograde, like in this immediate post-retrograde period, it also is a clue that missing information might come to light, or new information, new facts, new data, new documents are emerging, and that can help with decision making as well. It might also be that there's a second chance for something that you missed out on in November or early December, that you get, this second chance to try again. I also expect that as we come back from the end of year holidays, there are going to be lots of announcements about new commitments or changes in direction for 2025, both for regular people like you and I, and for public figures as well. And I think it's going to be, choices that are clarified, like the pin drops, the realization happens, and it's going to be what happens in this December 23rd to 28th period that leads to these changes in direction, new commitments, stepping away from this, stepping down from that, going to, slow down for a while or focus on something new. And it's these choices that are made in this last week of December that will lead to that. So that's a pretty pivotal week. Then we come to the new moon. So I really love that December will end with a new moon, which of course will be in the sign of Capricorn. A new moon is a much more energetically alive time to set intentions or to make future plans, compared to like January 1st, which is like a calendar date, but doesn't necessarily have any energetic association with newness or beginnings. So this new moon is at 9 Capricorn. It's on December 30th. If you're in Australia, it's on December 31st. And because this new moon is in that really grounded earth sign of Capricorn, it is perfect for clarifying goals. The new moon, of course, in Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn at the time of the new moon is in Pisces, making this supportive sextile to the new moon itself. And that creates, support or encouragement. It also offers things like strength or fortitude, maybe even a sense of worthiness, like I've earned this or I'm ready for this. And that can help you with these new intentions that you're wanting to set. This new moon in Capricorn, because it's ruled by Saturn in a water sign in Pisces, really offers a lovely mix of earth and water elemental energy. And earth and water together are our two cooler or cold elements. And so this can help with exploring a slower pace or a more reasonable, sustainable rhythm to your life. It might invite you to consider your feelings as well as your emotional capacity in your planning process, rather than just focusing on how much time you do or don't have. Just because you can schedule something won't always mean that you should. So having the time can be different from having the emotional capacity or the energy for something. And we're learning about these two different ways of planning or making commitments or scheduling under this new moon in Capricorn ruled by Saturn in Pisces. So overall, it's a really clear, grounded, clarifying new moon. It offers clues about security and safety, about how to build lasting foundations for yourself. So even though it's a new moon and we often think about that as, insight or intention for the next 4 weeks, you might find that given this new moon is ruled by Saturn, you're thinking little bit longer, further into the future than just the next 4 weeks. The 1 to 2 days following the new moon are also wonderful for those new beginnings or fresh starts. So they don't just have to happen on the day of the new moon. In fact, if you give it at least 24 hours, the moon moves far enough away from the sun to become visible again. And that's really when we get this power of beginnings or seeding coming through. So whether it's on the 30th, the 31st, or even January 1st, we've still got this new moon energy flowing through on those days. And they are wonderful for activating this sort of future vision, for talking about your ideas and intentions, and for putting together a new kind of schedule or pattern for yourself, for your life, for your time, essentially. Saturn in Pisces has a lot to offer all of us about being intentional, and that thoughtful kind of consideration can come through strongly under this really stable and supported new moon in Capricorn. So we get the lunar reset December 30th or December 31st, depending on where you are, which means as we cross into January 1st, we are under the auspices of a new moon. And finally, the last thing I wanted to share, which is probably the thing I am most excited about as we head into January, is that I'm thrilled to report Venus will move into Pisces on January 2 or 3, depending on where you are. This is the sign of Venus's exaltation. So we have this really kind of abundant, generative, kind of generous, if you like, version of Venus coming through for all of us, taking us all the way into early February. And even though Venus does have a retrograde cycle coming up, that will be in March, for most of January, we have Venus in Pisces and she's not in her shadow zone. And so we really have the best of this kind of, inspired and compassionate placement that is Venus in Pisces. We have the best of that to enjoy through the majority of January. Venus in Pisces feels like being nourished or replenished deep in your soul. So this is like getting that sort of watering energy. So it can be great for hydrating or healing physically, but more importantly, it's about restorative experiences or a period of restoration and replenishment for our emotions, but mostly for our energy, for our kind of, intuitive selves, for our energetic selves, and then for our emotional selves. You might find that you're enjoying more interactions with other people that really lift your spirits or kind of soothe your soul, that really touch you in that tender place within. Maybe you're reconnecting with hobbies or activities that just feel good. Remember that Venus is ultimately a planet of pleasure and enjoyment. For me personally, I've recently been remembering how much I love cooking food for other people. And even though I live in a small household, just me and my husband, I'm delighting in either hosting friends and cooking for them or baking treats that I can take out and share with others. So your things that you love, a hobby or an activity, it doesn't have to be painting or pottery. It can be literally anything. Maybe you really enjoy cleaning, or you really enjoy decluttering, or you love volunteering or being in your garden or working out. I mean, maybe you like needlepoint. It could be something typical in terms of like art and creativity, or it could be something totally unique to you. It doesn't matter so much what it is. What really matters is how you feel when you do it. So how it makes you feel. If it makes you feel joyful, if it brings out a bit of pleasure for you, if it gets you in that creative flow where you kind of lose track of time, these are the projects and activities we want to make more space for when Venus is in Pisces. Venus in Pisces, of course, this is a very mystical, spiritual placement. And so this period starting January 2nd might reignite your love of spirituality. It might help you reconnect with all kinds of mystical practices. If you've been lacking that touch of the divine in your life, Venus in Pisces throughout January can be a lovely transit to reconnect with any kind of ritual or mystical practice that you enjoy. Maybe there is music or an artistic expression, but maybe it's just pulling a card or working with crystals or making time for meditation or quiet reflection in a bath at the end of the day. There's a lot of things that, could be the thing with Venus in Pisces. As long as it's soothing for you and you feel that it is kind of getting into that deep well within, I think you're in the right place. So there are a few astro events to keep in mind over these next couple of weeks from December 21st through to January 4th. We've got that Jupiter square Saturn aspect with the addition of Mercury, kind of highlighting major overhauls, maybe big changes around focus or priorities, a bit of a major restructuring with Jupiter Saturn there. We've got a soulful and grounding new moon in Capricorn, and that can help you get clear on your intentions. That's coming December 30th. And then, of course, we've got that shift of Venus in Pisces, helping add some sweetness, ease, and a little more joy to your life. I wish you all a wonderful holiday season and a meaningful start to the new year. In the meantime, before we're back connecting here, if you need more astrology insights, I do share lots more astro detail inside my astrology guide membership. You can find out more or join us there via my website, kellysastrology.com. Thank you so much for being a part of the Kelly's Astrology podcast this year. I'm excited to continue sharing with you as 2025 unfolds. Until then, everyone, take care.